So I started my career back in the late 90s, in 97, working with two internet companies, one called Lycos, which was a big search portal, very comparable, kind of took on Yahoo at the same time, and then Amazon. So very early on with Amazon, when they were music, movies, and books, my job was to get music and movies, and that was quite a job at that time, trying to convince big giant publishers, whether it's movie studios, record labels, television networks, to get their then DVDs away from companies like Walmart and Blockbuster and Tower Records and Virgin Records, and try this new thing online. So saw really the emergence of e-commerce, the emergence of portals, then went on to work with eBay founder and first president Jeff Skoll on a movie studio called Participant Media. The goal of that organization was to leverage the power of the media to inspire social change. So what that means is there are movies out there that are about stories and about social entrepreneurs. So think of movies like An Inconvenient Truth or Syriana or North Country or Good Night, Good Luck, Kite Runner. These are all movies we made. Equity financed them, partnered with charities, and essentially the movies were giant commercials for social change. Then went on to join a very early Facebook. Some of the guys that I kind of grew up with in eBay and Yahoo and Google and all of those places were now coming to this new nascent college startup called Facebook, and I was brought in to put video on the site. But what they didn't want is Zuckerberg didn't want just YouTube videos on the site. He wanted to do something in his mind Facebooky. So we created a reality television show out of user-generated content that was for, by, and about Facebook users that examined different parts of their lives contextually. And ironically, it ended up launching the share button. So so I've been through .com1, .com2, and now here we are in the age of apps and mobile and social commerce, and seeing the world in a very different place, ubiquitous.
You obviously have a lot of experience in this space. What would be if you had to say your skill set, if you had to summarize your skill set, what would that be?
My skill set is across a couple of different verticals. One is messaging, and that relates to how you are propagating, evangelizing, and communicating your value proposition, your brand DNA. So what are you as a company? And that's not as simple as our technology is this and it does this. It's about how is it useful. So I really help companies to work on their communications, their brand DNA, their messaging. That comes from a background in writing. Also, I work on commercialization. So how does a product actually, when it's useful and it's being communicated in a powerful way, how do you then start creating transactions, right? And transactions are different for a lot of people, right? Ultimately, you want revenues, but those revenues can come in the form of, buying things, or advertising revenues, or traffic, or data. But it's about positioning your product in a way that is useful, that creates those buzzwords like stickiness, and you want people coming back and using it. And then another thing that I really do is a lot of mentoring. So I work with founders, I work with boards, I work with advisory boards, I work with investors on helping those messaging points and those commercialization, business development, partnership points to then make sense to them. So in a lot of ways, because I speak tech, I speak product, I speak marketing, I speak investor, I speak finance, I'm able to kind of bridge those gaps a lot. So in a lot of ways, I sometimes feel like an ambassador.
Right. So you're very socially flexible.
Yeah.
You've watched the evolution of technology. They said in 1999 to 2006 was the age of search.
Yep.
And then obviously from 2006 to sort of the present, it's the age of social media and e-commerce. Now, really, what's next? Is it all about social? What's next?
Well, I think that you're absolutely right, Charles. So if we started off with search and we then went, search and e-commerce kind of were hand in hand and grew up into social and mobile. I think what we're going into next is really the age of social commerce, right? And social commerce is how do you take all of this activity, on all of these platforms and all of these people connecting in so many ways, and how do you create commerce out of that? And again, commerce, the big point of commerce is how do people make money, but it's also not just about the currency of dollars, it's the currency of attention, right? How do we get people's attention? Right now, one of the biggest currencies online is engagement, is attention, is actually having people pay attention to you so that you can not only provide a service to them and monetize them, but you gain trust. So I think that things like push communications, things like contextual relevance are really, really important because we can't really sell anymore. online. I mean, direct sales online, certainly there's a huge business around it, but if you look at the way that social has come up, it's really taught us how to trust and not trust. Right? So we need to monetize and really create commerce out of that trust, those recommendations, those relationships.
Now, that leads us on to followit. Now, you came across followit. Tell us about your journey and how you came across followit and what got you so excited about followit to join us in a senior role. So just talk about that space, why, when and how you saw followit, what got you engaged.
So I saw followit very early on. A presentation was made with some friends of mine that I work with over at Bell Potters, and we took a look at followit, and there were some initial relationships, and got to meet you guys, the founders, very early on. What I saw immediately was how useful followit is, right? If you think about the real estate space, in a lot of ways it's broken, but we're not just taking on a vertical. What I got excited about is how you're using this contextual relevance. You're using push communications, you're using social recommendation. You're leveraging some of the biggest things in the internet now, which is discovery, right? Which is contextual relevant search, which is push communications, which is how do I get what I want and only what I want because I'm time poor. Followit is an answer to people's attention span issues, right? So not only does it provide really incredible tools that help both the industry and the consumers connect in a meaningful way, I also thought it was a really beautifully designed site. A lot of companies have useful technology or have a great value proposition, but their site is not intuitive. It doesn't look beautiful. It doesn't really come to us. It doesn't attract us. And also when I kind of got my head around, and it happened very quickly, and that's not a comment on how smart I am, it's a comment on how good a job you guys have done in putting your value proposition forward, is that I started thinking immediately, okay, if I want to live in this neighborhood that has these attributes, you can't do that currently, right? So one of the things that really attracted me to followit is not only is it solving a problem people have, it's solving it in a way that is terribly useful.
The foundation of followit as a platform, and I guess its ability to venture to other asset classes. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the idea that you don't search, you follow. Right? The idea that you're being pushed information that is only relevant to you. If you want a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in this postcode with this school zone, with this type of pool, with this type of access to parks and everything, what you're doing is the technology is helping you get a better personal experience. Now, if you can do it with a house, you can do it with an insurance policy, a car, a sporting team. Right? If you think about people's affinity for sport or people's affinity for cars, these are big decisions. Like you're a loyal, whatever fan, whatever team, club, league. You're loyal to a car. These are big decisions in our lives, whether they are purchasing or whether they are loyalties. The opportunity to be able to follow something like a sporting team or follow something like a car. I don't just want a BMW X5. I want this one. Right? And I could go and search all over the place and try and troll through and get repeatedly knocked back and calling people same as a house, right? Or I could say, you know what? I want a BMW X5. I want it gunmetal gray. I want 20-inch black carbon wheels. I want this type of seat, this type of stereo, this type And you know what? Bing, I get notified when one of those is available. How cool is that? Right? So I think that the idea of following is potentially universal.
They say that success requires a great idea like followit and a great team, endless hard work. What would you like? What's the next thing to follow? What would you add to that?
To that list, you're right. If you have a great idea and a great team, and you work hard, right, that's a recipe for success. But what I would do is add into that mixing bowl perseverance, right, guts, okay, luck. Right? And the old adage, you make your own luck certainly is true. But what I've seen from this founding team is years of dedicated hard work, right? Of being willing to fail, willing to pivot, right? Everybody talks about failure now and how important that is for entrepreneurs. It's something that's underestimated because sometimes you don't even know when you're failing. Sometimes you don't even know when you're pivoting. You just are. And I think that if you put into that grit, right? So, if hard work is one ingredient, and all these other things, but passion, right? You've got to love this so much, right? You've got to be able to get up every day and look people in the eye and love it, because if you don't, people can smell it. They can see it. If you're not passionate for what you're building and what you're doing as an entrepreneur, as founders, as technologists, as a startup, then, if you don't love it, nobody else will, right? I mean, if you're not willing to put your heart and soul in like you guys have, then no one else will, right? Because investors and the market can see it, right? If they can see it if it's not authentic. And I think that you guys are working incredibly hard, and I think that recipe for success will pay off.
So you travel a lot through Australia, the States, all around the world, and you'd obviously be asked the question when you describe followit to somebody, particularly a Truly or a Zillow or realestate.com or domain, what's the difference? So, how will they make it in this space when they're so dominant? What would be your answer to that?
That's a great question. So if you're looking at a competitive landscape, and I think that real estate, like a lot of industries that we talked about, particularly things like cars, there are a lot of industries that are in incredible flux right now, ripe for disruption. There are a lot of people trying a lot of things. All right, I think that followit's uniqueness is not just its core competency around messaging, around that push technology, not just its ability to replicate and scale to other verticals, but the fact that followit came from an idea of how do we start doing online auctions, right? It came from a transactional engine element. And interestingly enough, you guys built that and said, all right, well, what do we do with it? And you made a really smart decision in my view. You didn't go out and just be an IP shop and then license that to other people. You said, you know what? This piece of technology that we built is going to be the game changer down the line. What we need to do is build an audience. So you've got a very holistic approach. I think that a lot of other companies are working on very narrow verticals, right? They're solving little individual problems in a gigantic industry. What you're trying to do is bring the core elements together, the industry side and the consumer. Bring them together and you can do anything. And I think it's that holistic approach, right? Industry and consumer, right? So a lot of other companies are working on either the industry side or the consumer side. You're marrying them both, and it's tough. That's hard to do. One of the things I like the most about followit, and I think why it will last, is that you're going after the big brass ring, right? You're taking a big swing at the fence, right? You can go out and create a little thing, and it can get this big, right? You guys are going global. This is a global solution. There is not a place in the planet that connecting an agent and a consumer is not a good idea. So I think that you'll suffer a lot more headaches, but ultimately you will win because of the holistic nature.
Finally, I guess the brand.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the significance of branding and marketing behind that. Talk to me about what your thoughts of the brand is.
Yeah. So one of my big things, and this is, I'm not the first person to say this nor make it up, but it's something I really live by, is that when your brand becomes a verb, right? So we Facebook it, we Google it, we Instagram it, we follow it, right? So you've got that in bed, meaning that you don't have to work a lot on what it is. Okay, I'm following it. What am I following? I'm following a house, an apartment, a suburb, a price point, a school, a car, an insurance policy, whatever. I'm following what I need. It becomes the thing that I need. So I think that you have an advantage right there. How you describe it, is actually very easy, because you can put an example. It's a real contextual example. I want to follow this, right? And you can rattle it off like I have, right? House, suburb, price point, bedrooms, whatever, right? And you instantly get it. So I think that your brand is part of your DNA, which a lot of people aren't, right? Like, what's a Google? Now that was the age when you just thought up crazy words. I think that because you are looking at contextually relevant information that is personal, to have a name and a brand that just says what you are, it helps a lot.